International Center for Scientific Research. He's at the informatics department of the ANS, which he joined a few months ago. Before that, he was at the LAS laboratory in Toulouse, where he launched the GPECO team, which focuses on the movement of automotive systems. From 2011 to 2012, he held a chair in robotics at Collège de France, and he made many significant contributions in many domains. Robotics, obviously, but also computer science, automatic control, and neuroscience. And he made crucial contributions to machine learning for humanoid robots. And today he's going to talk about mathematical foundations of robot motion.
Merci. Thank you for the introduction, or thank you for the introduction. What do you prefer? With the micro? Yeah, okay. Okay, then my presentation today is about the mathematical foundation of robot motion. I would like just to remind that robotics is about moving computer control machines. That means that I like to define robotics, perhaps it's a little bit reductionist, but as the science of motion. Okay. Then the key point is to truly to understand that there are moving machines. This is not only a computer. Okay. Then robotics is about motion, and then the main question is the following one. In fact, we would like to make a machine very useful for us. And then we would like to control that machine at the very high level. For instance, we would like to ask the machine to grasp an object, to grasp a bottle of water. Okay, and then for that, we would like to control the machine by saying, okay, please grasp the bottle and return. Grasp the bottle is a sentence that speaks about the environment, the space. The bottle is outside of me. Okay, then the bottle is in environment, and the robot has to understand what does it mean. And grasping a bottle can be defined as putting the frame of the end effector just on the frame of the bottle. We may understand that. But how to do that? That means that the order which is defined in the physical space should be translated into the sensory motor space of the robot. The robot has to perceive the bottle, to move towards the bottle, and then to control all the degrees of freedom to grasp the bottle. Then, fundamentally, the robot programming is a question of inversion of spaces from the definition of the task, which is expressed in the physical space, into the sensory motor space of the body of the robot. Okay, then, how to account about motion science at large, or motion planning and control? I would like to give you an overview of almost 40 years of research in motion planning and control. And to do that, I would like to introduce, during a little bit more than 1 hour, to introduce all these people. Okay? Then this is the bibliography of the talk. Then you will see, I will speak about all the people here. Okay? Then you can see that there are people, perhaps you recognize some of them. There is Jean-Claude Latombe here, but perhaps you know less this guy here, or even that one. Okay, then there is a mixture of several people. Okay, then let us go. What is a motion? What is a motion? recognize that this definition is correct. A motion is a continuous function from the time to the space. Okay, then I'm moving. Then what will be a discontinuous function from time to space? Then there will be a kind of teleportation. Okay, then the motion, it's absolutely a continuous function from the time to the space. It's quite reasonable to define a motion like this. Okay? Then let us take an example, a very simple example, which is an example of two bars, two articulated bars moving in the plane here. Okay, then the first question is how to locate this bar in the space. More precisely, how many parameters you need to define the posture, the position of the system. Obviously, you need two angles. Okay, then this is a fixed position here. This is a fixed bar. Then the system is moving like this and like this. Okay, then we need to know this angle here and this other angle. Then two parameters, two real numbers, two numbers are enough to fully define the position of that. Okay. Then you can draw on the board. Okay. Then the first axis here for the first angle, the second axis here for the second angle, and then there is a square here, which is 0, 2 pi, 0, 2 pi here, where this system is represented just by a point. Okay? If I take another point here, I have another position for the system. Okay? Then I transform, I represent this posture just by a point here. Okay, then into a square. A square, why? Because 2 pi equals 0. Okay, you know, this is like the Pac-Man, if you want. If you go this direction, and if you reach 2 pi, then you enter into 0 here, okay? Then this is not exactly a square. Okay? This is a square where you identify the border. Okay? Then the 2D representation by a square is not the right way to represent this space. We have to identify the border. Then this is not a square, this is please, come on. There is, you identify the border. Now, usually I'm looking for, now usually in the system, but you are too good. There is always students saying, oh, this is a sphere. Okay, no, this is not a sphere. But of course, all of you are very, very excellent. This is not a sphere, this is a torus, yes. Okay, then the right way to represent the space is a torus. Okay, great. Now, if I am considering the obstacles here, then I would like to go from that position to that one here. Okay? And there are some obstacles. What does it mean? That means that there are some positions on the torus which are not allowed. The obstacle in the physical space are transformed into an obstacles in the so-called, we will see, configuration space, okay, which is represented here. That means that if I take a point here, I'm sure that there will be a collision here. Okay, and it's quite easy to test. Huh? If I take a point at random here, okay, then there is a specific position in the space, and then I can use a collision checking just to check if there is a collision or not with the obstacle. Okay, but you can see that this shape, which is the exact shape in that case here, it's quite complicated. We don't understand exactly the transformation is not obvious. For instance, here you have two obstacles in the physical space, while here in the configuration space you have only one obstacle. But let us assume at this stage that we know how to make this transformation, how to transform the obstacle in the physical space into obstacle in the configuration space. And here there is a miracle, because this problem, which is quite complicated, in that space, it becomes very obvious. Because how to go from that position to that one means how to go from that point to that point while avoiding the obstacles in the configuration space. And the algorithm, you solve the problem in the configuration space, okay? Then this gives you that, and by providing that, of course, you provide at the same time a motion, okay, in the configuration space. Then this is the fundamental concept which has been introduced by, first picture, by Thomas Lozano Perez from the MIT, where this is not a theorem, this is something which is very obvious, but the deep contribution has been to consider that any admissible motion for the 3D mechanical system appears as a collision-free path for a point in the configuration space. That means that you transform, by doing that, you transform the 3D mechanical system into a point, okay? And then now, what is a motion? A motion is a continuous function from time to space, okay? Then this is the configuration space, and then now we go to algorithmic path planning. Then what is the challenge? The challenge is to translate a continuous problem into a combinatorial one. Is that possible for a computer to address the continuity issues? Then this is the problem. And in fact, then forget just for a moment, all what you know about numerical optimization and all these algorithms that provide, that explore a space by using numerical analysis and numerical algorithms. Just keep in mind, here I would like to first address the question of the structure of the space, okay? And what a computer can do, then what is the meaning of combinatorial structure? The basic combinatorial structure are just graphs, okay? And then the problem is how to capture the topology of the configuration space, the collision-free configuration space with graph. How to capture the topology, that means that how to answer the question to know if these 2 points are in the same connected components of the collision-free configuration space. And this is the continuity gives you the topology of the space. And the combinatorial issue, you have to provide the graph, okay? Okay, then first of all, is this problem decidable? Is it possible for a computer to solve that problem? Yes, the answer is yes. And then this problem, of course, is known as the piano mover problem. Okay, and the proof is done by Jacob Schwarz and Mika Sharir in a famous paper on the piano mover 2 that gives the proof. Then what is the basic foundation of the proof? The proof consists in reducing the problem to the problem of the decidability of elementary algebra. Okay, then what is the decidability of elementary algebra? Imagine that I am writing on the board here this sentence: there exists x, a real number belonging to R, such that 3 times x squared minus 4 times x plus 12 equals 0. You remember that? You remember that? Okay, then imagine you have the formula here, and then you are computing b squared minus 4ac, and you check the sign. And you say, oh no, there is no real number, checking that. But you are very good. You are very, very good. Why? Because among all the real number, you may decide that there is no real number, checking that. You may decide that, okay? You are truly, truly good. Yeah? Then you are able to decide if there exists a real number, checking that, okay? And in fact, you have seen that you are reasoning no more on the variables, just on the constant, A, B, C. This principle is a very general principle. You can consider any logical formula working on the polynomials. It's possible to decide if this formula, logic formula, is correct or not. This is the decidability of the elementary algebra, which has been proven by Tarski in the 50s, okay, late 50s. Okay, but now the question, okay, is very nice because these proof just answer the question of the existence. Okay, then this problem is decidable, but the ambition, of course, of Schwarz and Sharir was to provide some effective proof of that. And for that, we have to wait until the 70s, where another mathematician, which is Collins from UK, I don't have the picture of Collins. If somebody knows Collins, I would like to get a picture of him. And then he is the first to give a constructive proof of the Tarski theorem by providing the cylindrical algebraic decomposition on the semi-algebraic set on a manifold. Comment? Yeah, the coefficient set should be integers, yes, for the polynomials. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, then for that, the key point, of course, is that the algorithm is doubly exponential in the dimension of the space you want to consider. And then after that, there were the contribution by John Caney, who made his PhD on reducing this complexity to a single exponential algorithm by using another technique, which is not a cell decomposition, but this is a technique of retraction on the border of some subdimensional manifold. Okay, then the problem is decidable, right? We know that there are some algorithms, right? But the bad news is that their algorithms are completely ineffective. Okay, then they are very, very complex. And then, in fact, the complexity has been proven by John Reif from Duke University in North Carolina. He showed globally that the problem is NP-hard. Okay, then there are the 80s, you see. Then there are very interesting mathematics, but not effective at all from a robotics point of view, from the engineering point of view. I would like to continue on another theoretical issue. I consider that if you want, in the literature, the paper on the piano mover 2 by Schwarz and Sharir is certainly one of the most cited papers, but I'm pretty sure that it's the paper which has been the least read by the researcher, because it is very, very difficult. But of course, this is a global reference. It's very famous. Another one which is much less famous is that one. The paper by Hopcroft and Wilfong, and again, I don't have any picture from Wilfong, about the existence of motion in contact. Then what is the idea of the existence of motion in contact? Okay, then I am a robot with a very sophisticated vision system, and I want to go from that position to that one. I take a picture, I take a model of that, and then I will use my favorite algorithm, which is only in 2D, and then I provide that kind of trajectory here. Okay, but now let us imagine that you are a blind robot. There is no vision. Sorry, Jean. There is no vision, there is only touching. Okay, then you want to go from that position to that one, then you try to go to that position, to that one, and then, of course, you are touching the obstacles, and then you are controlling, avoiding the obstacle, and then you go like this. Okay? Then that means that you are applying a strategy that works quite well, that say that if you have an obstacles like this, okay, you want to go from that position to that one, go straight, okay? Then once you have a contact point here, follow the border, and then continue to the goal. Yes? This is a very good strategy. Then the question now is, if there is a solution for a robot with vision system which has a global view of the space, that means that there is a solution like this, does it mean that there is a solution that follows that? By reducing that, that means that you are considering one single obstacle here. If there is a collision-free path between two contact points, is it possible or not to deduce that there is a path maintaining the contact? This is just to validate the strategy of the blind man. Okay? I consider an obstacle, the chair. If there is a motion from a contact point to another contact point, may I deduce that there is a path maintaining the contact? Okay, you see the problem. Okay, then let us consider again my favorite example. Then this example has been introduced by Vladimir Lumielski in the 70s, and then he gave the exact equation of this course on the torus. Okay, then this is known. This is one of the few cases where it's possible to compute exactly the shape of the obstacle here. Then this is the obstacle in the configuration space. For instance, in this specific case, if you are considering the torus, how many components has the free space? Then this is the white area. Obviously, there is only one. Why? There is two obstacles. Okay? There is one single component which is collision-free. What does it mean? That means that any problem you are asking here has a solution. Okay? Because there is a single connected component. Okay, great. Keep in mind that picture here, because now it disappears. Then now I am considering two examples here. This first example, where the system is in contact with the obstacle, where the contact from a contact to another contact, right? In this example, I want to go from that position to that one, contact, from a contact to another contact. Yes? There is a solution in the free space. There is a solution in the free space, you remind you. Why? Because the number of connected components of the collision-free space on the torus is only one. Then there are a solution for to go from the contact point to another contact point in the free space. Then my question now is, since there is a collision-free path between these two contact points, may I deduce that there is a collision-free path that maintains the contact? Then my question is that a motion in contact? Then what is your feeling a priori? I don't want to spend too much time on that. Is that possible to go from that position to that one by maintaining the contact, or to go from that position to that one by maintaining the contact? Then, no, how many people for yes here? Yeah. And how many people for no? Yeah, okay, then there are some people are wrong already. And here, how many people yes? Okay, how many people no? Okay, then other people are wrong. Okay, then this is not obvious. Why? This is truly obvious. Truly. I consider this first case. Then I remove these obstacles. They are not very useful. I would like just to explain what is the image of this obstacle here on the torus. This gives you this shape here. And in fact, there is one single obstacle here, and the starting point is here, and the goal point is here. Then there is a collision-free path. There is a collision-free path here. But this obstacle has two borders and not one border. And then it's not possible to go from that position to that one. Okay? Then the answer here is no. And what about now this example here? This is this image. Obviously, from I don't know where is the starting point, somewhere here. There is a collision-free path, but there is also a collision-free path in maintaining the contact. Okay, why? Because here, this obstacle has only one border. Okay? And more than that, if there is a solution, there are exactly two solutions. It is not possible to have only one solution. The number of solutions should be two. You see why? Because you have a single curve, and then you are splitting the curve in two parts, and you can go from that way or that way here. If there is a solution, there are two solutions. It's not possible to have only one solution. Okay? Then all these issues are related to the algebraic topology and the proof of the existence of motion in contact, and which is quite important if you are considering, for instance, force control and then to manipulate objects in contact. You have to understand what is the topology of the contact space. And it is based on the study of the homology group. Okay, then there are truly mathematical foundations to understand that. And the proof is based on the use of the sequence-Mayer-Weiertorich and the homology groups, blah, blah, blah. Then there are very theoretical mathematics to that. But what say the theorem? The theorem say then, if there is a collision-free path between two contact points for a single obstacle, then there is a path in contact. The only condition, then this is not true for the system, rotating system with two bars, okay? Then in general, this is not true on the hypertorus of dimension what you want, Usually a system is defined by a number of translation and number of rotation. Then this is R power n times S1, the angles power P, if you want. Then the dimension of the configuration space is n plus P. And the theorem becomes true as soon as n is greater, strictly greater than 0. You may imagine a system with a lot of bar, a translating bar, where the theorem does not apply, but if you add just a single degrees of freedom in translation, the theorem becomes true. Okay? Okay, then now, during the 80s, there were, we tried to solve the problem, but it was not, we have no hope to have, it was not very useful. And then it has been possible to prove that to compute the exact shape of the configuration space in some special cases, where you are considering, for instance, here, the motion in translation and rotation of polygons amongst polygons. And if you want to go from that position here for the square, if you want just to turn the square here, how to do that? Obviously, you have to go like this and like this. And in fact, this is very obvious when you are considering the configuration space of this system, because you want to go from that position to that one, and the only solution is to make something like this. Okay, then it's possible to compute the frontiers of the obstacle in the configuration space in these special cases. There is an algorithm which is in n cube log n, provided by Jean-Daniel Boissonnat and Francis Abnin in the 80s. But in fact, there are very, very small cases. Then, at the end of the 70s, there were no hope for efficient, exact, and complete solution. And then there were people working on approximate solution, and this has been the contribution of two French researchers at that time, Pierre Tournarsou and Bernard Farverjon, who suggest to relax the ambition to compute the border of the obstacle in the configuration space, but just to compute an approximation by hyperparallelepiped in the configuration space. And this is, they introduced that kind of techniques, which has been also developed at LAS by Thierry Siméon and Laurent Gouzen in the 70s. And here you can see the approximation of the configuration space of a system with 3 bars. Okay, then there are very conservative structures here. That means that if you explore that structure and if you obtain the trajectory, you have the guarantee that the trajectory is correct. But of course, this is only an approximation. And in parallel of that, there were the numerical method, and the numerical method appears here, where you introduce the very famous potential fields method based on optimization techniques. And the father of these techniques is Oussama Khatib from the Stanford University. But I would like to insist by putting again Bernard Farverjon, who developed also at the same time the same principle. What is the principle? The principle is to put some positive attraction on the goal to be reached, and then to prove a negative potential for the obstacle to be avoided, and there is a field like this. Of course, the main drawback of this method is to fail to stop in some local minima. Yeah, but it's quite similar. Again, you are right. Okay. Okay. If you want, this is a presentation which is just the introduction of a course that should be much more developed. No, but I would like, no, but seriously, at that stage, I would like just to mention the parallelism between most of the time we cite only the potential field method, but the contribution by Bernard Farveijon was truly clever in the sense that it was truly related for complicated system to compute the tangent space to the obstacles in the configuration space, just by making the computation in the workspace, in the 3D workspace, and based on distance computation of the workspace, to slide along the obstacle. You are right, but again, there are numerical methods. That means that they work with a local point of view on that. Okay. Then the white page here, because now we don't have any then. And then what appears in the 90s is this what I say when hardware solve the problem, renew the topic and solve the problem. Okay, then. To summarize, the question is to have an abstract configuration space with obstacles, and I would like to go from a point to another point, and then to compute a path. Okay? How to do that? And do that by sampling, for instance. Then what does it mean? That means that if I am taking a point at random here, I can check in the 3D space by using a collision checker if this point is in an obstacle or not. The key point is that we don't know about the shape of the green obstacle here. We don't know about this shape in general. But we may evaluate if a given point corresponds to a collision free or not. Okay? And of course, there is a second operator. I don't want to enter into the details. That gives you the possibility from a point to another point to check if the path is a collision free. You are making, for instance, a linear interpolation between the 2 points, and you check by using a collision checker if this path is collision free or not. Then you have 2 main operators, one that say if a given point, a given configuration is collision free or not, and the second operator, if the straight line segment between 2 points is collision free or not. Okay? And again, for that, you use all the 3D software, CAD software. You can use a CATIA or just to check that. Okay? There are tools. And once you have that, then you want to go from that position to that position, and then run a random sampling algorithm, and you compute first some point, and then you reject, of course, the point which are in collision, and you try at the same time to link, okay, the sample you have to compute, and then you run, and then at some stage the algorithm will stop if there is a solution, and it will not stop if there is no solution, okay? And then, for instance, here, if you want to go from that position here to that one, the algorithm will never stop, okay? It's not possible for this algorithm to conclude that there is no solution. Okay, then this is the random sampling. And then the other one is the random diffusion. Then you want to go from that point to that one, and then try to go. And when you don't know what to do, make something. Try to reach the goal. Okay, and then you will see at some stage, by taking a long time, you will certainly succeed, and with the same theoretical property. Okay. Then the introduction of this algorithm has been introduced by Jérôme Barakan and Jean-Claude Latombe by trying to solve the problem of the potential field method. When you stop in a local minima, do a random walk for a while, and start again the gradient descent. If you stop in a local minima, try a random walk again. And then you have an algorithm with two loops, one which is gradient descent, one which is a random walk. And it's possible to prove that. You will succeed. Then this has been the very, very first introduction in the beginning of at the end of the 80s. The first time I entered was the student of Jean-Claude Latombe and Jérôme Barakan was Yoto Koga. Yoto Koga, for me, it was exactly in July 90s. I remember in Stanford. The guy, the PhD student, showed me a system with 8 bars. Okay? Not 2 bars as my first example, but with 8 bars, the configuration space of dimension 8. Sometimes we succeeded in solving problem in 2 dimensions, in 3 dimensions. Perhaps one simple case in 4 dimensions, but 8 dimensions was completely impossible. He implements this algorithm, and with 8 bars, he showed me how this kind of snake is moving to reach the goal. It was completely amazing. And then then you see how I would like to have a board, but imagine that there is a board here. And then I am drawing the 8 bar like a snake, okay? And then the goal is to go from the end effector here to put it here among the obstacles here. There are obstacles. Then the solution is something like this, okay? Very fast, just less than 1 minute to compute the path. And then I asked him, there were some obstacles here. I was not happy. After more than 10 years of failures trying to solve the problem with exact and complete method, this stupid method, which is descent gradient, random walk, descent gradient, random walk, was working so well. Then I consider, now you remember the starting configuration like this. Then I asked him to have that kind of configuration. I introduce a spiral, if you want, for the mechanical system. And the potential fields method asks the end effector to go that direction here. Why? The only solution is to do that. Okay, you see. But by providing this starting configuration, I create a very, very, very deep potential fields Puy wheels. Well, okay, a very, very, very deep. That means that the time you need to escape is very, very, very long. And after more than 1 day of CPU, there were no solution. Okay? Then, of course, we don't know about these bounds. And understanding the bounds for that, it's a very, very challenging issue. At the same time, there were in France an algorithm which is not very well known, while he's taking roughly the same principle, then developed by Pierre Bessières, Emmanuel Mazer, and Juan Manuel Ahuatzing, which are quite similar, but much less popularized than the method by Barakan and Latombe. And this has been the beginning of the many, many contributions, and one of the most famous is the thesis by Lydia Kavraki and by Peter Svetska. Lydia Kavraki with Jean-Claude Latombe and Peter Svetska with Mark Overmars. And there is a famous paper grounding the random sampling techniques, and there are the 4 authors here on this paper. And then after that, then this was for the sampling. And then after that, there were the diffusion method, and the diffusion method has been introduced then by Steve Laval and his friend James Kuffner here, with contribution then from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. I don't know if he's still there or in the industry. James Kofner, after moving from Stanford to Tokyo, again in California with Google Robotics, and now he's with Toyota, I don't remember exactly. David Su launched a laboratory in Singapore, and this is the rapid random tree, okay? Then the famous diffusion method, and there were the sampling and the diffusion method. And then there is Nancy Amato here from the University of Texas, and Oliver Brock from the University of Berlin, and in Toulouse there were your teacher with Thierry Siméon and Juan Cortés, and I started a company with a former student here, which is Etienne Ferré. I will speak a little bit more. And then that worked. Okay, but before proving that work, I would like to make a pause from another point of view. Okay, then the pause is finished, and then I would like to introduce another problem, which is this problem. And then here appears a researcher which is not well known in robot motion planning or algorithmic in general. He is my mentor, Georges Giralt. And Georges Giralt, in 85, tell me, okay, Jean-Paul, you are working with the concept of Thomas Lozano-Perez. Any motion for the 3D mechanical system appears as a collision-free path in the configuration space? Yeah, okay. But you have seen that this robot has wheel? Yeah, and then? No, I don't know. It's, you are sure that the property apply? But yes, any admissible motion for the 3D mechanical system appears as a collision-free path in the collision-free path in the configuration space. Yeah. Well. Then that means that if I provide you a collision-free path in the configuration space, then this is an admissible motion? Oh, he was asking the question of the opposite, of the converse. And then this open the question how to park a car. If we use the classical motion planning techniques, purely geometrical, considering only the collision-free path, then you provide to park a car. It's very easy. You drive like this, and then you go like this. Okay? This is without any collision. But of course, it's not possible because you have to maneuver. But that means that any path is not an admissible path. Okay? And then this is the question. Okay? Then that introduced the dynamic system. Then, of course, the very first statement is right. Okay? Any admissible motion for the 3D mechanical system, blah, 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 appears as a path. Then the converse is true for holonomic system, and the converse is not true for non-holonomic one. Usually, then the question is, what is a holonomic system? The best definition to remind is that a holonomic system is a system which is not non-holonomic. Okay, great. Now, I mean, this concept is completely unuseful, the positive one. Then the key point is to understand what is a non-holonomic one. Okay, and then the question I would like just to introduce here, the first solution we provide to park a car. Okay, then how to do that? Okay, of course, this is a collision-free path, but not any collision-free path. And then we provide the very first algorithm in the beginning of the 90s. by the contribution of then Michel Theiss here, who is now associate professor at the University of Toulouse. But here you may recognize perhaps Paul Jacobs, who is now the president of Qualcomm. Okay, then after getting his PhD with John Kenney at Berkeley, he spent 1 year with me in Toulouse working on that. And here is Richard Murray, and we work all together to say that the number of maneuvers varies as the inverse of the free space. Yeah, it seems reasonable that if you have a very few free space, then the number of maneuvers is very high. But the evolution is as the square of the size of the free space. And it will be interesting to understand why a square and not a log or not a cube or not. And for that, we have to better understand what is an holonomy, the notion of holonomy and non-holonomy. This notion is fundamentally a question of mechanics. But here I would like to give a mathematical version of that, which is a question, in fact, of integrability. Okay, then now I consider a system here, which is a clock with 2 arrows. Okay? And here, this is the car-like system. And I would like not to enter into the details, but you agree that the velocity of the small arrow, okay, is 1/12 the velocity of the large arrow. Yeah?
It's a pen. It's a pen, not an arrow.
Okay. Thank you for correcting. Okay, then now you have here a differential equation. Here, this is the differential equations that gives you the idea that the car is moving without sliding. That means that the direction of the admissible motion is supported by the direction of the car. Okay? Then the derivative of y over the derivative of x equal tangent theta. And then this gives you, okay, then there are 2 differential equations here. That one is quite easy because we know how to integrate that. That means that x equal 1/12 y plus some constant, real number, okay? What about this differential equation here? Is it possible to integrate that differential equation? But in fact, I think this is not because we don't know how to integrate, that it's not integrable, but I would like to insist to better understand what is the meaning of that question. What is the meaning of integrate a differential equation? Why some differential equations are integrable and why it seems that some other ones are not integrable? But what is the true meaning of that? And I would like to show you this example. The clock, the configuration space of the clock is the torus, okay? And then if you are considering this differential equation, and if you start from noon here, you can see on the torus the reachable space of the clock. Okay? What are the position here, which appear here? Okay. Okay, then it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Okay, let us conclude. But you see what will happen. We will stop exactly midnight is equal to noon. Okay. Okay, we stop here. That means that the dimension of the reachable space for that system, and there are 2 angles, and is only 1-dimensional. That means that if you are considering, for instance, this position of the clock. Okay? This time will never happen. This point is not in the reachable space. If you have a clock that gives you that position, this is a wrong one. Okay? Then my system here, this distribution is holonomic because it reduces the dimension of the accessible path space. That means that you start from a torus which is dimension 2, while the dimension of the accessible space is only 1. Here, if you are considering the constraints imposed by the car, if you are considering a car in an empty space, the desert, I don't know, you can see that you can, okay, it's not possible to move like this, but it's possible to reach that point by driving like this, okay? Then that means that you may reach any point in the three-dimensional space, okay? That means that the dimension of the reachable space is 3. You start from a manifold which is dimension 3, and the accessible space, according to the constraints imposed by this distribution, is 3. This distribution is not integrable. Okay? Then this distribution is integrable, and this distribution is not integrable. Then the notion of integrability is related to that notion here. And now the key point is, the notion of small time controllability I would like to introduce. At some stage, we can say that, okay, my system is non-holonomic, then it's not possible how to park a car, how to do that in an effective way, how to prove that it's possible to park a car. And the concept is the concept of a small time controllability. And you are considering a point and a neighbor around that point. And you are asking if that point may be reachable from the origin without escaping. Okay, then this gives you, yes, this point is reachable without escaping the neighbor. What about this point? It appears that this point is not reachable without escaping the yellow neighbor. Okay, you can prove that it's not possible. Then there are two types of points. The points which are reachable from the origin without escaping, and the point which are not reachable without escaping. If the points which are reachable without escaping is a neighbor of the origin, then definition, my system is a small time controllable. Okay, then what is the interest of that? The interest of that is that you can use for a small time controllable system, you can use an approximation scheme that say that use your favorite algorithm, PRM, RRT, or what you want to compute a collision-free path, which is not necessarily admissible, and then apply on that path on any point here. By approximation, you apply the property, and then you can see that it's possible to transform the path into another one. Then this one is just an approximation of that. It's not very nice, but after that, once you have this solution, it's possible to put some optimization techniques to smooth the path. And then you have the following theorem. For small time controllable system, the existence of admissible motion is characterized by the existence of a path lying in an open, okay, then there are some topological subtlety here, connected components of the free space. You have, in some sense, a necessary and sufficient condition. Okay, and now the question is, there are two central questions. Is my system non-holonomic? And is my non-holonomic system small time controllable? And here there are two very powerful tools from mathematics. The first one is the Frobenius theorem, and the second one is the Lie algebra rank condition on the control vector fields. Okay, I would like not to, because I'm late. Okay, then again, here at this level, we are at the level of the existence of a path. Is that possible to park a car? Yes. at the condition that there is a collision-free path. Okay, okay, but how to make the approximation scheme? I need to devise a steering method that accounts for small time controllability. And I can't use the linear interpolation because the linear interpolation does not provide a feasible path. Okay? And then for that, we have been very lucky because we worked on the optimal control. And we start by some contribution by Lester Dubins from Berkeley, which has been enlarged by Reeds and Shep about the car-like that moves forward and backward, and revisited by the optimal control theory, and mainly by using the maximum principle of Pontryagin, that provide effective tools to compute the shortest path for a car that moves forward and backward. And it's possible to integrate that into the algorithm, and this is exactly what we did for in the video I showed you. And then after that, it's possible to provide a synthesis. I don't want to enter into the details. Then optimal control is very efficient tools to do that. Unfortunately, we have been very, very lucky to work on the car because this is a very special case. In general, we don't know how to solve the problem. And then this is why when I decide to put a trailer in addition to the car, then we try to use the numerical approach, and this has been the contribution by my former student.
Still no exact algorithm.
Excuse me?
Still no non-exact algorithm.
The question is there exists some non-exact?
Is there any exact
Yeah,
algorithm?
the optimal control. The optimal control when you know how to solve it. Now, if you want, here, the result is very effective. In that case, the optimal control is a sequence of no more than 5 pieces, which are arc of circles and straight line segment.
There's no obstacles.
When there is no obstacles, of course.
What I'm asking, is there now an exact algorithm when you have obstacles? As far as
No.
you know?
Okay, we are very good friends. I don't like that question. Now, why? Why? Because we can prove that the optimal solution does not exist. There is no optimal path in an open set.
But even is there an exact algorithm for meaning a path in the presence of obstacles? And last time I looked, there was none that I knew, but that's why I was asking.
Now, if you want, for instance, okay, we may enter into the details. Paul, no, what I would like to insist, and why? Because this is a very sensitive question. Because the first time we published this work about that, the paper was rejected at the IEEE ICRA conference in Sacramento, because this was the first algorithm to park a car, and the review, okay, then this is nice, but you don't prove that this is the optimal way to do that. But the optimal path does not exist. Yeah.
That's for the optimal, I said, for constructing an exact algorithm for constructing a path.
An exact algorithm for constructing a path is the algorithm we have published on that. First, with obstacles. First, okay, then let me summarize. First, what has been the thesis of Michel Theis? First, you compute with an exact algorithm working on polygons among polygons by using the Francis Avenin and Boissonnat algorithm. Then this is an exact algorithm and complete. Then you provide a path like this. And then after that, you apply the approximation scheme and it will converge.
No, but with the trailer, and I don't know.
With the trailer, no, we don't know.
Sorry,
Okay. With the trailer, we don't know. With the trailer, we don't know. And then what we did, okay, then the question here, what we solve is how to go with a car with a trailer from a position to another one. Okay, by using numerical optimization. We know that. And then we use the probabilistic method, okay, to use the techniques for sampling. And it works. It works. But of course, there is no proof. Okay. Okay, and then this, in order to generalize that, we have to make the link with control theory, and this has been introduced by Shankar Sastry and Richard Murray by introducing the special system, which are the chain form, then that apply for the non-nomic system. And all this theory has been revisited by the French school of control theory, which is Michel Fliess and Pierre Rouchon here, who introduced the concept of flatness. And all this material has been used by Florent Lamiraud in his thesis. Why? And what has been the contribution of Florent Lamiraud is to show that the flatness property of the system can be used to make the system small time, to devise steering method that account for the small time controllability. And there are very, very technical issues, very clever, in fact, where Florent Lamiraud shown that the accessible space by using the differentiability of the flat output, I don't want to enter into the details, is a cone, then this is not a neighbor, but by making the combination, linear combination, convex combination of some canonical curves, it's possible to generate the cusp point. Okay, then I don't want to enter into the details. And then after that, we ask the question, okay, then since the car-like is a small time controllable, what about this system? And this system with multiple trailers, it remains small time controllable. What does it mean? That means that here, this is the car. Here, this is the last trailer here. That means that if I move the trailer from that position to that one, okay, with no collision, that means that I can drive. Okay, I can drive, and then I will go from that position to that one and move the car. It seems that it will be very complex, and it will be then, if this motion is collision-free, then I may drive, and I may introduce some obstacles, for instance, like this. Then the car cannot escape the garage, but the theory say that, yes, you can maneuver the car in order to move the last trailer from that position to that one, since your system is a small time controllable, and it has been proven. Then the question is how complex it is. Okay, and it appears that the number of maneuvers to move that is the inverse of the free space, the epsilon, which is the free space of the car, power Fibonacci of n, n being the number of trailers. Fibonacci, then this is truly the real complexity of that. And for that, it is based on the study of the sub-Riemannian metric, which has been introduced partly by Vergic here, which is a Russian mathematician, and by the French school with André Belaïch, who is no editor of mathematical books, Jean-Jacques Rissler and Frédéric Jean got his PhD on that. Then there are very clever mathematics on that. And then now I would like to conclude on the reminding problem about time optimal solution. Here is the perfect example. We don't know the optimal trajectory for that kind of system, while this is a very nice system. This is just two independent driving wheels. We know that the optimal control are bang-bang. There are no singular abnormal or singular extremal. They are very, very nice. We know that the optimal solution are piece of clotoids and involute of a circle. We know exactly that. We don't know about the combinatorics. We don't know about the number of switching point we have to consider. Okay? Then that means that we don't know how to compute the time optimal path for that. If we consider this system is another open problem what is the main difference with the previous one I've shown is that the system of attach is not exactly above the axis of the wheel, it's just behind. And these small details make the problem very difficult to solve because it does not answer the necessary and sufficient condition for flatness. Okay, I don't want to. Okay, and this is another open problem here. This system is like a car-like system moving only forward. Is that possible to park a car by moving only forward? Yes, it depends on the size of the free space. Okay, but is there some algorithm to decide if it is possible or not? No, this problem is an open problem. Okay, and you may extend that in 3D, and we don't know how to decide if there is a collision-free path to escape. And then just to conclude that it works, okay, then this is an example. Okay, I would like perhaps to insist on that one. Here, this is the first time you have seen that I consider the geometry of the world as being given. Okay, there is no perception at all, there is no algorithm in vision or not. And then that means that the trajectory we are planning are completely offline. And here you have a combination of offline planning with feedback, not based on the vision system, but on the laser rangefinder that allows to update in real time the real time, very in real slow time. Voilà. Voilà, in real slow time to adapt the trajectory, and then there are mathematical issues in terms how to deform, to reshape a non-holonomic path into a non-holonomic one. Okay, then how to make that? Then this is the work by Florent Lamiraud, and you can see that it's possible in the real world to have very, very fine maneuver by using that. You may use all these algorithms in computer animation. There are some issues in control how to make this guy walking or running. Then this is completely different, but we use the same. And once you know that, how to do that, it's possible to make obstacle avoidance for very complicated systems like this system. I don't want to compute the dimension of the configuration space, but you can see that it's more than 20 dimension. Okay? Then in particular, you can see that the guy here, Eugène, is binding the head to avoid the obstacles. And then you can use it for humanoid robots. Here, the challenge is to combine locomotion, obstacle avoidance, and manipulation. Okay, then this is a question of whole body motion planning here. You have to avoid all these obstacles. Of course, the geometric model of the scenes are given, okay? And then this is just the execution of a path which has been computed offline. You have that kind of a challenge, how to grasp an object without making the explicit programming of the stepping here. And this is the contribution by Oussama Kanoun. This is truly the embodiment of the grasping function. Here, this is a famous experiment where the path has not been computed automatically. You can see that there is no algorithm allowing to compute a collision-free path in this configuration. But then, of course, we enter that specific posture by hand. Okay, we specify that, but this question here is not a question of planning, is a question of executing the path without deviating from the path which has been computed. And then here, what we shown here is that the control system we apply on a HRP2 robot verify the condition of the small time controllability. That means that it's possible to tune the gap between the real motion and the path which has been computed. Okay, and I stop this application here. I would like just to say that that kind of techniques can be applied for virtual prototyping. Here, this is what we did with the startup Kineo, which is not part of Siemens. Then how to check if a given mechanical part is well designed. You have by Juan Cortés the application of all these techniques for molecular docking, and I will skip the application to neuroscience and better understanding the locomotion. And as a conclusion, what is very exciting research here in robotics is that we try to provide the new robot, to design new robot while understanding that. Then as a summary, you can consider that I speak about all these people, and here is another more serious bibliography. You can consider this book. Thank you for your attention.